Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support really does make a huge difference. You'll find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org/contribute. Thank you so much.
Well, welcome everyone. I hope you can all hear me clearly.
Yeah.
I want to say what a delight it is to have you here joining me at this time, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I want to tell you my theme for tonight, and then I'll be talking about the theme for the overall event. But the theme for tonight is every time you meditate.
Rosemary, you could stop by Joel now. Thank you.
Okay, that probably makes it easier to pick me out from the crowd. I want to say my theme for this evening is every time you meditate, you place your head into a demon's mouth, and why this is an important factor for us to remember. So my theme for the overall event, as I was hinting at before, is about ways that we can learn through Buddhist teachings to awaken our big mind, to become awake, not in spite of hindrances that we have. And I'll talk more about what constitutes, in various terms, a hindrance. Not by getting rid of what we call hindrances, but by awakening within our hindrances, so that we can learn the truth. It's something that I have to learn over and over again. The truth of Suzuki Roshi's famous teaching, big mind is knowing that we are always living in small mind. I have a koan to share from Matthew Juksan Sullivan's translation of the Blue Cliff Record, his book called A Garden of Flowers and Weeds, followed by his commentary. And that phrase I used before, that every time you meditate, you place your head in a demon's mouth, is from his commentary, as you will hear. I'm not going to share the screen on it, so just sit back and listen while I read this, if it's okay. It is case number 43 from the Blue Cliff Record. It's called Dongshan's Heat and Cold. And many members of this group are familiar with Dongshan, one of the teachers from the Tang Dynasty. He was a direct student of my favorite teacher from that period, Yunyan. And he had a very long career and is very celebrated in the koan literature. The case goes like this. A monk asked Dongshan, when the winter cold and summer heat arrive, how can we avoid them? Dongshan said, why don't you go to the place where there's no heat or cold? The monk said, what is the place where there's no cold or heat? Dongshan said, when the weather turns cold, the cold kills you. When the weather turns hot, the heat kills you. So here is the commentary by Matthew Sullivan. This is a book I really enjoy because he has not included the commentary that is found in most other versions of these koan records, where it seems like people are trying to top each other with poetic allusions and clever asides and that sort of thing. So this is his own commentary here. The teachings of Dongshan Liangjie, who lived from 807 to 869 by our calendar. The teachings of Dongshan Lingjie in the 43rd case captures an idea that recurs in every sort of Buddhism, from the ancient to the modern, from Tantra to Zen. The best way to deal with painful or scary things is not merely to face them, but to throw yourself into them like a child cannonballing into a pool. In the Tibetan Kagyu tradition, they tell an interesting story about the patriarch Jetsun Milarepa, most usually known as Milarepa. He was a yogi who attained perfect enlightenment after years of practice in a cave in the mountains of Tibet. His training, it is said, made him almost impervious to hardship. He wore nothing but a cotton shift throughout the Himalayan winter and ate only boiled nettles. In pictures, he's usually portrayed as skinny and long-haired, like a naked, starving hippie. But his meditation was diamond hard. Combined with his many austerities, this gave him shamanistic powers and a reputation for insanity. One day, Milarepa returned to his shallow cave to find it infested with a pack of demons. They were trashing his meager possessions, tearing up his tantric scriptures, and defiling his nettle cauldron. Although he hissed at them, Milarepa put aside his fear. Although they hissed at him, Milarepa put aside his fear and calmly began to preach the Dharma to the demons to liberate them from their ignorant malice. Milarepa was the most potent teacher on the Tibetan plateau, but the demons ignored him. So he changed tack. He chanted a spell from his shamanistic powers to exorcise the demons. Even as he spoke the sacred mantras, the evil spirits laughed in his face. So he tried a third strategy. He understood these demons were a manifestation of his own mind, so he sat down to meditate. Contemplating the emptiness of the demons, he decided to wait them out. He thought he could sit in meditation for at least as long as they could run riot. He was wrong. For as long as he sat, they rioted, and soon even the stamina of the great Milarepa was worn down by their incessant vandalism. Then it hit him. He singled out the largest and most savage of the monsters. Charging at it, he pried open its jaws. Before it could react, Milarepa thrust his head into its mouth and forced the demon to chew. "Eat me," he cried. The horde was stunned. They knew they had no more power over the yogi. One by one, they vanished. Milarepa was alone. There are many different terms for what Milarepa did. Trungpa Rinpoche calls it leaning into the sharp points. Jinqing calls it going into the weeds. Enkyo Pat O'Hara calls it turning into the skid. Zen Master Peter Taylor calls it tasting poison. Dongshan calls it letting the cold kill you. Throwing yourself into something painful or scary seems hard to do. Not true. Every time you meditate, you place your head in a demon's mouth. When you sit, you feel an itch, or you get chilled, or your back begins to throb. When this happens, you don't preach the Dharma to your ache. You don't try to force it away. You don't pretend it's not there. You don't contemplate how it is empty and devoid of inherent existence. You sit with it. You taste it. And by sitting this way, you transform the ache into part of your practice. Practicing this way, sometimes you will be lucky and the aches or demons will go away. That's a common experience. Experiences, or at least mental states, will pass away. Cramps, maybe not so much. But oftentimes, the aches or demons do not. That is their affair. Your affair is intimacy. The more painful or fearful your problem, the more important it is to get intimate with it. Nuzzle up. Insight does not flow from tranquility alone. The best time to meditate is when your emotions are raging. In his very first Dharma talk, as the abbot of his temple, Zhao Zhou said, "The Buddha is distress. Distress is the Buddha." A monk came forward and said he didn't understand. He gives all people distress, replied the master Xiao. How can it be avoided? Asked the monk. To what end is avoidance? Asked Xiao. Distress is a tool. If you have terrible backaches during meditation, then backaches are your tool. If you have demons during meditation, then demons are your tool. You didn't ask for this tool, and you don't deserve it, but it is the tool that you have all the time. You can choose to use it, or you can lose it in the tall grass so it rusts in the rain. So I'm going to stop reading there, and tomorrow I'm going to talk about something called the default mode network. And I'm sorry that I'm stumbling so much over my words this evening. I keep moving consonants around. The default mode network, which is a part of our brains that many of you are familiar with because you have psychological training, but it's part of our brains that gets activated when we're not doing anything. So it is the demon's mouth that we stick our heads into absolutely every time we sit down to meditate. I've got a few more minutes according to the schedule, and I want to add just another story that's kind of illustrative of the same point that I'll be talking about tomorrow. This is from Tara Brach, and it recounts a famous story of the Buddha over his lifetime involving a character given the name of Mara. One of my favorite stories, Tara Brach says, one of my favorite stories of the Buddha shows the powerful of a wakeful and friendly heart. The night before his enlightenment, the Buddha fought a great battle with the demon god Mara, who attacked the then Bodhisattva Siddhartha Gautama with everything he had: lust, greed, anger, doubt, etc. Having failed, Mara left in disarray on the morning of the Buddha's enlightenment. Yet it seems Mara was only temporarily discouraged. Even after the Buddha had become deeply revered throughout India, Mara continued to make unexpected appearances. The Buddha's loyal attendant, Ananda, always on the lookout for any harm that might come to his teacher, would report with dismay that the evil one had again returned. Instead of ignoring Mara or driving him away, the Buddha would calmly acknowledge his presence, saying, "I see you, Mara." He would then invite Mara to tea and serve him as an honored guest. Offering Mara a cushion so that he could sit comfortably, the Buddha would fill 2 earthen cups with tea, place them on a low table between them, and only then take his own seat. Mara would stay for a while and then go, but throughout, the Buddha remained free and undisturbed. When Mara visits us in the form of troubling emotions or fearful stories about our own failings, we can say, "I see you, Mara," and clearly recognize the reality of craving and fear that lives in every human heart. By accepting these experiences with the warmth of compassion, we can offer Mara tea rather than fearfully driving him away. Seeing what is true, we hold what is seen with kindness. Here Tara Brach is quoting Thich Nhat Hanh. Seeing what is true, we hold what is seen with kindness. We express such wakefulness of heart each time we recognize and embrace our hurts and fears. Our habit of being a fair weather friend to ourselves, of pushing away or ignoring whatever darkness we can, is deeply entrenched. But just as a relationship with a good friend is marked by understanding and compassion, we can learn to bring these same qualities to our own inner life. Pema Chodron, Tara Brach says, Pema Chodron says that throughout spiritual practice, we are learning to make friends with ourselves, our life, at the most profound level possible. We befriend ourselves often, rather than resisting our experience, and we open our hearts and willingly invite Mara to teach. So that's my talk for tonight, and how I want to kind of prepare the ground for tomorrow, in which I'll be talking about some other aspects of our human life, and then drawing on the Satipatthana Sutta, and particularly the wonderful teachings from Analayo that I got to explore with Kim in a short intensive that we had 2 months ago, or a month and a half ago. So may I ask for any questions at this time? Is there anyone, let me just ask, is there anyone that's not heard the parables about Mara and the Buddha inviting Mara to tea? I think that's a pretty familiar story. Anyone that has not? No. Okay, good. Anyone who has not heard the story of Milarepa? So that's okay, good, thank you. And anyone who's not heard or encountered the case, which is number 43 in the Blue Cliff Record, where Dongshan says, if you're cold and you want to avoid it, you need to go where there is no cold, right? Okay, thank you. All right, well, that gives us plenty to work with tomorrow. So we're actually finishing a little bit early than we would normally. The Kinhin period is not supposed to start until 7:40. So let me ask that people get up, get a drink of water, and return to where you're seated, your seats in the zendo, and just use this time to stretch or to use the restroom or take a drink of water, etc. And I invite everybody online to do the same. Please come back just before 7:40 p.m. Austin time so that we can walk in Kinhin together. Okay?